being able to knock down shots. Like if you can shoot the ball in today's day and age and defend, you'll always have a place on a team, you know?
All right, guys, this has been a very long time. It's been about 2 months. This pandemic is finally, I would say, a lot over, and it's been a while. I haven't done a podcast in a couple months. Luckily, one of my good friends, Max Heidegger, is in the house. He just came from, well, a car just went by. He came from Israel. He's from California, local near me, but he was playing basketball overseas, and it's one of those things where I just had to wait for him, and he's finally back home for summer, and it's a very special treat. But before we get into Max and talking about the European Basketball League, we got to talk about our sponsor, My Whistlebox. If you guys haven't checked it out yet, if you're an athlete, if you're an accountant, anything that you're dealing with private information, please go download My Whistlebox. It's going to save your life. It's a new way to exchange private information, so if you're a fan, are you a fan after I've talked to you about it 1,000 times?
Yeah, of course. You know, you got to download it.
Sounds good. And that's our only sponsor because we're not sponsored by anyone else. Just kidding. We got more in the future. But welcome back, guys. We got Max Heidegger in the house. This is super fun. We're going to talk about, hopefully for 45 minutes before this camera turns off. Hopefully that doesn't die on us like the last one did. But if you haven't listened to the last one with Renzo is a music producer / singer that was a top 10 finalist on American Idol. I think you should go check it out. But if you're a sports fan / basketball fan, you're in the right place at the right time. So welcome, Max. Welcome to Casa de Raiden, because we are in beautiful Redondo Beach right now.
Yeah, it's a great place. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
No problem. This is a fun, casual thing. Max is joining me on my staycation at Club Dub, which is, I like to say, Jerry's house. J-Dub, who was on the show a couple before this, director of the Lakers, very kindly to give us a house for free for a week. Don't ask why, but we got a free house for a week. But
Mike's a responsible guy. That's probably why.
Yeah, taking care of the dogs, and one dog already went to the hospital. But today we got some fun information to learn. A lot of kids, you guys are going to learn a lot about how to get overseas, how to get into the NBA, how to progress in your basketball career, and we got Max Heidegger, a guy that dropped 40-something points on me in high school. Well, not me, my high school, which is a bunch of bad basketball players. So welcome, Max.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it, Mike.
So I want you to tell everyone, where are you from? Let everyone know that the local California people know who you are, but people overseas and across the world, who are you? Where are you from? Tell us about yourself.
So Max Heidegger, like you said, I'm from the Valley, Chatsworth, California originally. Been a Valley kid basically my whole life. Went to, high schools in the Valley, I went to Sierra Canyon growing up because I lived literally right under there before they had a high school, before they had anything, and then matriculated kind of I actually went to middle school there, then matriculated into high school, went to, Crespi in the Valley, right in Encino, and then finished up my high school career at Oaks Christian. It was a, Valley kid, born and raised just like you, and, it was a great time, man. I love the Valley a lot.
Max is the Valley kid that everyone knows because he went to so many schools in a very good way. This kid's been everywhere, but everywhere for a good reason.
Yeah.
And how about we talk about that? You are from the Valley. How'd you get into basketball? You have family, which I know you want to talk about your dad, and your dad is Austrian and did alpine skiing and has a history in that, which clearly you did not get into. But how about you tell us a little about your, behind the scenes of family?
Yeah, I mean, one, it's hard to get into, into skiing in the Valley. All you have is Big Bear potentially or Mammoth, but it's, at least a 3 to 4 hour drive every which way. So didn't make too much sense. But I actually got into it because I grew up playing soccer because my dad's European. I grew up skiing a little bit, snowboarding, things like that. Because we would go up to Mammoth or places like that. And one of my best friends growing up, we met at gymnastics actually, because my older sister and his older brother did gymnastics together. And when we were around, I don't know, I was probably 4 and he was maybe 7, and we just became best friends ever since. And when I was around 10 or so, he was like, "Hey, if you like the Lakers or whatever," like when we were just hanging out, and I was like, "No, I don't really know what that's about. I don't really know what that is." And so he kind of introduced me to basketball, and then from there I kind of fell in love with the game and, really started playing and, started playing like locally at the, rec center and at Mason Park actually. And if you know where that is in the valley, it's like
I don't go out there far.
Yeah, it's pretty deep in the valley, dude. It's like it's right under Porter Ranch actually.
I know exactly where that is.
Yeah. So started there, and then started playing a little bit of like travel basketball and stuff like that. Over the years, and then kept getting better, and then started getting into high school, and all those types of things.
Dude, that is awesome. So, how would you get? I mean, you got into basketball at a young age. Your dad, I mean, yes, he's European. He's a soccer lover. He's a ski lover. Who taught you how to play basketball in terms of, did you have a coach growing up? Was there a experience where you fell in love with basketball one season where you were scoring all the points as a kid? What triggered you being like, I'm not doing anything else. I'm going straight basketball no matter if my dad says yes or no?
So I played, like growing up, I played, like I said, soccer, a bunch of different sports. And actually a coach that I met a little bit later on, his name was in the Valley. His name was Colin Jamerson. Actually, he runs a program called Game Timers, like a travel ball team for, I don't know ages now, but usually from anywhere from like 8 to like 13, 14. And so he took myself in, a couple other of like my best friends at the time. Actually, one of my childhood best friends, his dad played pickup basketball at Taft. And then they'd practice in Taft after them. So he brought his son in. I was really good friends with his son. And then so that's, how we got into there. And that's when I, kind of, I guess, caught the bug for basketball and really started, caring about it and, wanting to continue playing and wanting to, kind of become the best player I could. Of course, when you're, I don't know, I was probably 11 or 12, your goal isn't to, go to college or anything just yet. It's just, you're playing for fun and, playing with your friends. But he kind of was the one who taught me the fundamentals and how to play and all that type of stuff. Me and actually a lot of other guys from the Valley who ended up playing professionally or, some guys who played in the NBA, some guys who played high-level college. So he ended up having a lot of good guys, but it was never like we all randomly found ourselves there. It wasn't like one of those situations where everybody was coming from all over. It was just a bunch of Valley kids, and we just all ended up being, pretty good players. So it was pretty interesting to see how that ended up. That's
awesome. Was there a player, an NBA player growing up that you idolized? Kobe Bryant, anyone that, with your sharp shooting, Kyle Covert, or not Kyle Covert, Ray Allen, like anyone that you, I mean, if you don't know who Max Heidegger is, this guy can shoot lights out. I want to see him against Steph Curry. I really think he can beat him in a three-point contest.
I don't know about that one, but that's a tall task, but I appreciate it.
Was there anyone that you reflect your game on that you want to be like?
I mean, yeah, I think, in the modern game now, I think Steph Curry, like if you're a smaller guard who likes to shoot, I mean, I think, or who can shoot, I think he's the guy who everybody wants to be and who everybody idolizes. But when I was a kid, growing up in LA, it was Kobe Bryant only. I had his poster in my room, and he was everybody's favorite player growing up in LA. And it was just, I remember actually like getting the call when, not to take a sad turn, but when he had passed away, and it was just almost like surreal. Even my mom, who never touched a basketball, never really cared about basketball at all, like she called me crying and was like, he just meant so much to LA, and I'm sure to you, even people who didn't play basketball, didn't, like, I know you played, but I'm saying like you were a baseball player, so it's not like
basketball and baseball and soccer. I was a big Kobe fan.
Yeah, but like everybody, you even see people who never played basketball, like when they shoot in a trash can, they say Kobe, and it's like he just had such a big impact on LA, I think, in basketball.
Do you think his mentality structured you as a player on getting the last second shots, his grit, his defense? Because I see you on the court, you do everything. You're playing 100% the whole time. You're diving for things. You're shooting for things. Taking the last second shot. You do everything that what Kobe basically gave to the world to see.
I mean, I don't know. He was so, in the best way possible, he was almost like insane because he was so just dedicated to his craft. I wouldn't say I'm that dedicated. I'd hope I'd get there, but he's like, I think everybody who grows up and wants to be a basketball player, I think should look at him as as just in terms of pure work ethic, I think they should look at him and his mentality and just be like, wow, like that's how I'd want to be, or that's how I should, model myself after. And even whatever you do, whether it be, I don't know, your job, you want to do real estate, like the approach that he took to the game of basketball was just, it's why he was so successful, but it's also why some people just couldn't work with him because he was so singularly focused. It's just, it's crazy to watch and crazy to hear about, the stories about him.
Right. I really think he like reflects everyone. I think, I mean, he changed the way I played baseball, basketball, and soccer. Too bad I am 6 feet and my basketball career couldn't go farther, which is why I dropped on baseball and played college baseball. But I think he's changed the whole world. Every guest I've had on, between Jerry and Mike, everyone's been reflected by him, and including yourself. So I really think he's a big part. But going from that, high school.
Yeah.
High school was a very big surprise for you in terms of growing, transferring schools. You played for Crespi High School. You played for Oaks Christian High School.
Yeah.
Did you play anywhere else that I'm not knowing about?
Yeah, I actually did. I played at Blair for 4 months. It was basically I started at Crespi. I was probably went in 5'8" and 130 pounds maybe on my best day. But my freshman year, I played on varsity. We had really good players at the time. Our best player that year was London Parantes, who went to Virginia, and he's played a little bit in the NBA, played overseas, played in the G League. D'Anthony Melton was a freshman with me, went to SC with you, plays for the Grizzlies currently. And another friend of mine, DJ Ursery, who played up at Pacific, so he was another Division I player. And so I played on varsity my freshman year and played really, really well. Really enjoyed the experience. Like, it was great. And then I started growing a little bit my freshman year, going into my sophomore year, probably grew to, 5'10", 5'11". Started picking up like scholarship offers, that year.
I think the dog got in.
Yeah, hopefully it's not throwing up again. We don't have to go to the hospital or the veterinarian. But picked up a couple offers. Like Washington had offered me at the time, Virginia, Utah State, like a bunch of, like a good amount of schools ended up offering me going into my sophomore year. So I was like, kind of building myself. Just to explain the story of the high schools, I guess. And then my sophomore year of high school, I broke my back, or I fractured my back in 4 places.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so I fractured my back in 4 places.
How did you do that?
So how I think it happened, I don't remember. I just remember when it started hurting. But I remember one day we were actually playing Mater Dei in a fall league game, so it actually didn't mean anything, which kind of sucks. But I fell on my back, and from then on, I started getting shooting pain down my back into my legs. But it would only happen. It was so weird. It only happened ever so often. And then later I played with it for probably 3 months or so. And then after a while, I got hit in the leg, right? And so I couldn't move my leg very much, at all. I got hit in the quad, I got a bruise or a quad bruise, and I couldn't really move my leg at all. And so I'd seen a doctor, and he told me basically, he was like, yeah, we think your quad's okay, but we want to get your back checked out because it just wasn't moving properly. And then got a CT scan, and they found 4 fractures, L5 in my back. So it was pretty wild. And I remember actually asking the doctor, I was like, hey, I guess I've been playing with it for a while. What's the worst case scenario if I keep playing? He's like, oh, if you take a bad fall or something and it slips, you could be paralyzed or something. So I was like, oh, okay, nice. I'm gonna shut it down. So I actually had this big plastic back brace, it looked like a turtle shell basically. And so I had to wear that for, probably 6 months, 6, 7 months.
Did you cry at any time during that point, thinking that your basketball career was probably maybe over?
Yeah, I mean,
you couldn't do anything. You're if I fall one more time, can't surf, I can't play basketball, I can't tackle someone.
No, I mean, yeah, at the time I was just I was kind of singularly focused on getting back to where I was and, focused on college and high school. But it was really sad for me, seeing my friends play, in high school and do well and, see them play AAU, and I'm just basically sat at home. Like I couldn't even go to school for a while because the doctor was like, it was really bad for a while, and so like I had to homeschool for a little bit because I couldn't even like sit in the desk, with the back brace on. I couldn't even sit in this desk, and then I would like, had to been in a chair, and I don't know, it was just a whole thing. So I ended up talking to school, and I was like, hey, can I homeschool for a while? Like, and they were like, yeah, okay, and so they tried to work with me, I think the best that they could at the time, but it just ended up being really like awkward coming back. And but actually I remember, so the reason I loved Crespi, like I loved my teammates and friends and stuff like that, but the reason I ended up leaving was, so I went to a game, like the coach was like, hey, come, like you're still part of the team, and I'm like, yeah, I'd love to, but I had spoken to I forget what he was, principal or head of school at the time or whatever. And so like my mom had spoken to him, and they okayed me being homeschooled, right? So I went to the game, and he was like, I can't remember at halftime or when it was, he was like, hey, like you weren't at, like there's a policy, like if you're not at school, you can't be at the game. And I'm like, all right, like, but he already okayed it, and I'm like, I don't want to be here like I want to be here for my teammates because I care about them, I care about Crespi at the time, and I care about my friends and my teammates and the coach. Me and the coach were really close at the time, and I still talk to him. He's a great guy. But yeah, he was like, you basically have to leave or whatever. And so I'm like, and my dad, I couldn't drive at the time. My dad drove me all the way to Loyola and whole thing. So I like stopped going to the games. And then one day, like my mom was like, hey, why haven't you been going? Like, blah, blah, blah. And then I told her, and then he said that he hadn't said that, and that he was lying, so it became a whole altercation basically. And he was, the principal or the head of school or whatever. And so it's a small school. So I felt, kind of awkward and stuff like that going back. And I was, like you said, I was very upset. I did have very emotional moments where I was like, not even in terms of basketball, I was like, if I was paralyzed, like what would I have done or something? You really start to reflect. So it was pretty wild. But so then I think at the time I didn't know how to properly handle it. So I was just like, oh, I'm over it. And so I went to Blair Academy in Blairstown, New Jersey.
And this is when you were a sophomore?
It was going in my junior year of high school, yeah. So I went there for my junior year. So this, like, I got hurt my sophomore year. This happened.
So you went Crespi and a half to Blair.
I finished my sophomore year at Crespi.
Okay.
And then over that summer, then I was like, I was starting to rehab. I wasn't even fully back yet, but I was like, I'm going to go to Blair. I was like, I want to get out of Crespi because that whole, interaction, I just, I was a kid and I was upset about my back and about basketball and stuff. So, at the time I just left basically and went to Blairstown, New Jersey. Like,
is that where you started rehabbing, or were you fully recovered then? And
no, I wasn't fully recovered. I had already started rehabbing and stuff. So I was like semi back, but I wasn't fully recovered at all. So I kind of started like continuing my rehab there. And honestly, like, pretty much every experience I've been in, the coaches have been great, and like, I really care about them. And actually, the coach out there, Joe Mantegna, they have a really good program, but he's a great guy, awesome dude. But I ended up going there, and I wasn't fully recovered, and I tried to, push back too fast, and I ended up like breaking a metatarsal or having a stress fracture or metatarsal in my foot. And then I tried to like recover there and, rehab and get back, but it was just like, I'm in the middle of nowhere in New Jersey, and it's like,
basically the whole, as people, if high school basketball, I would say maybe towards your sophomore year when everyone starts maturing, AAU ball is the way to go. That's how you get recruited. That's how you get seen, unless you're a top high school. You're literally injured and can't even play, and not even having a show of who you can possibly be.
Yeah, I couldn't play, like, and it was hard too because the schools who were recruiting me weren't any, because I didn't play, like you said, I didn't play AAU going into my junior year at all. I didn't play I hadn't played the rest of my high school season, so it was getting a bit frustrating, and I was feeling like, a bit of pressure at that time too. Like, not pressure, but more like, all right, I wanted to get to a certain level, and I wanted to get to a certain place, so I was like, I got to get this done now. And so I ended up getting hurt again, tried to rehab it, and ended up coming home, back to the Valley. And I actually, funny enough, because I joined back in the middle of the year.
I didn't know that.
Like when
All
I
I
came
saw is
home.
you dropped points on us, and I thought
No.
you were there the whole season.
No, so no, my junior year,
Oh.
I left Blair my junior year, and I was like coming back in the middle of the school year basically, and I actually went back to Crespi for a while, but I didn't play or anything, and I didn't want to be like, try to come into the team and stuff like that, because I was friends with all the guys, and I didn't want that. Like midway through the year, I just come back and try and play, and in that whole situation. And so I came back and just was a regular student, and I was like trying to rehab my foot, and was having like some other, like injury issues and stuff. Just so I was trying to get over still my back and everything. So I ended up just not playing my whole junior year basically, except for I think I played a half of one game at Blair, because I rehabbed enough to where I thought I could play, and I played a little bit, but by halftime my foot was just like thumping and pounding. So
Right. So your back is healed. Your foot is healed. Come senior year, you now transfer to Oaks Christian,
yeah,
and you ball out the whole season. Didn't Oaks win league? You guys
Yeah.
won league.
no, we actually came in second, but we came in second, but I won
Should have
the
been.
MVP.
Should have been first.
Yeah.
But from that, you played a whole high school year. How did the whole recruiting? To fast forward, he then gets to UCSB, but senior year, how did the whole recruiting process go? The amazing player you are. How did you get seen? What was the process of you were injured your first 3 years, basically high school? How did the UCSB coach find you? Was it because of your senior year? Was it what you did off the field?
So, I had built up like some good recruitment, like I had said earlier, between my freshman and sophomore year, because I played my whole freshman year and then the beginning of my sophomore year. Actually, when I came home, I'd quit playing like just totally, and I was working. Like I was interning at an accounting place. I was working another place I was like, oh, I want this stuff on my resume because I got to go to college, and I was like done playing basketball. I was like, my body can't handle this. My back is, not great. And then I went to Oaks Christian Middle School, so I went back. Because all my friends were there, and Crespi was an all guys school, which is awesome. But I wanted to be around some of my female friends and stuff like that. And so I went back to Oaks, and then October of my senior year, I started playing again. And then I guess my high school coach, who I'd known for a long time, another great guy, his name was Robert Eichart. He like called some schools and stuff like that. That because like, oh, he's back playing, and like so they came because I was formerly a good player. So a good amount of schools came, and I started picking up some offers, and I was actually gonna wait. How sometimes you can wait until a later date.
Yeah.
Santa Barbara came, and I took an official visit, and I loved it up there. It's like if you've been.
I've been to UCSB,
Yeah.
University of California of Santa Barbara.
Yeah, it's like it's right on the beach. It's great academic school. You can have a great time if you choose to do so.
Great basketball school now.
Yeah, it's doing
Especially
really well
because of you, a great basketball school.
Yeah, they're doing really well. They made the tournament this year. They were projected to go a little bit farther, and I thought they would, but they actually lost. They had a chance to win their first round game, and I think they would have went to the Sweet 16 had they made a layup. One of the big dudes ended up missing. It went in and out. I was overseas devastated. But yeah, and it was just a great school, great fit. But I was going to wait a little bit just to make sure. And then I caught mono. So I was like,
Dude, you literally gone through everything.
I know. It was like a while.
What else has
especially in
happened?
high school.
Like
a lot, but it was wild. So then,
too many girls, guys. Max was with way too many girls he was kissing. Mono.
Yeah, of course, that's what it is, right?
Kissing disease.
Yeah, and then so I was just like, oh, of course. But I loved Santa Barbara, and like I visited a couple other places, but like something about Santa Barbara was just great, and so I ended up committing there, and then got healthy off the mono in a couple of weeks, and then I ended up finishing out the year and finished it out pretty well, and did pretty well against Michael and Agora both times.
And then also my other team, which we'll get into. You finally made it to UCSB. You've gone through all that traumatic stuff in high school, which throw that in the past now. You're at UCSB. You're now a freshman, and you got to work your way onto the team on earning respect, being that guy, being the guy that will take the last shot. And throughout those years, you earned the respect. You became, in my opinion, watching you play, the hardest worker on the team. You were everywhere. my USC Trojans, this guy literally put up a fight every single time he played them. And supposedly your last year, you guys were supposed to make it to March Madness if the pandemic didn't happen.
It was looking that way, yeah.
It was looking that way.
I mean, everybody experienced the same thing. So it's, it was hard for me. It was hard for me because it was just like everybody's going through this. So it's, how can you possibly be upset? And funny enough, speaking back on that, I had sprained my ankle right before, so I was gonna miss the conference tournament anyways. So I wasn't even that mad. I mean, I was mad for my teammates and stuff because they still had a really good chance, I thought. But yeah, it was just but everybody was going through it. It was such a weird time,
right.
And it was such an unprecedented thing in our lifetime. So it was for a while, it was I didn't even care about basketball. I was just what's going on, I was scared to get COVID. I don't know if you were, but it was just so wild.
It was a super crazy time.
Yeah, it was insane. But it sucked to have that kind of taken away, especially for all the seniors, myself included, but everybody, all the seniors across the country who didn't get to play in their final NCAA tournament. Especially people who already had their ticket punched, so to speak, is
right.
What they'll call it, to go to the NCAA tournament. Who had their automatic bid. So it was just sad, for everyone, but it's a bigger deal,
Right. And talking about UCSB, tell the kids out there that want to know what it's like playing Division I basketball, especially UCSB. I get it. They have a really good conference, in my opinion. It's very competitive, very good. I think it gets overlooked from the East Coast. The East Coast does not understand how many good West Coast conferences there are. But what is the mentality that the UCSB coach wanted from your team, yourself? What is the daily schedule of waking up in the morning to going to bed at night and studying for your classes? Because it is a very academic school.
Yeah. So actually, funny enough, my first year, I was originally recruited by a different coach. So after the first year I was there was pretty tumultuous. We didn't have a great year. We had some guys have some academic issues and things like that. And then a coach came in who ended up being my coach for the next 3 years. Me and him are really close. He's actually Jewish. His name's Joe Pasternak. Great guy. He's he can't be a hair over 5'6", but he's just he's small, but he's a go-getter. He'll call if he wants to recruit you or something, he'll call you 8 times a day. Come here. You know what I mean? He's one of those guys who. He doesn't have any shame about it. He's going to try to get what he wants. Great guy. But to answer your question, when he came, it was a lot more regimented. And granted, it depends on your major. If you want to be, because we had a kid on our team who was I think he was a bio major, right? So his course load was a lot heavier than someone who was not to bag on history or something, but someone who's a history major.
History's tough.
It is tough, but
I can't do it.
It's no bio. It's no bio.
That's true.
For me, we'd have weights usually 4 or 5 days a week in the morning at 9. So you'd have to get up for that. Some people would have class. My senior year, I had class in the morning before, so I'd have class at 8.
And you guys were on a quarter system, correct?
Quarter system.
So that's
yeah.
The classes are quarterly long. They're fast.
Yeah, 10
it's not
weeks.
A full semester.
Yeah, 10 weeks, and then that's it. But usually, it's better and worse because if you can get lost very quickly. Because it goes so fast and, it's such a heavy curriculum in such a short period of time. So you can get lost, but at the same time, if you don't like a class or something, you can get out of it pretty quickly. And
right.
You can take less classes at a time. So I was in usually 3 or 4 a quarter. Whereas I know in semester you were on probably, 5 classes?
I was in 6.
6? Okay.
I was a little bit of an overachiever, but...
Of course.
That's because I had 2 years. I had 2 years at SC to get through all the classes I wanted to take.
That must have been pretty brutal, honestly.
No, I loved it.
Really?
Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism. I had a blast taking sports classes, journalism classes, podcast classes. It was fun.
Yeah. So, but it didn't. You never felt it affected you, and you didn't feel like you didn't have enough time in the day or something at certain points?
I'll just say this. Playing sports, playing 2 years of college baseball, dealing with trying to get straight A's and transfer over to my dream school, USC, you would 100% agree. It puts you in a mindset of you wake up in the morning, you lift weights, you go to class, if you're able to go to office hours, you go to office hours to earn the respect of the teacher.
Yeah.
You go to practice, you come home, you take a shower, you eat food, and you do your homework. And If you have some free time, you'll hang out with your friends. I get it. It doesn't sound fun, but we all make free time for our friends and, ladies and boys on both sides. But I think it mentally puts you in a right spot by playing a sport. Playing college basketball, you were on a system. Every day you knew what you're going to do. You knew what time you're going to be home.
Yeah.
And it made it easier for your life, right?
Basically, like, to continue, like, just to get back to it. So after, sometimes I had class in the morning, then you lift. You usually have class till, I don't know, we'd have practice every day at 2:30. So when you have to be at practice. Like 2 to 2:30 would be the only times. So you'd have to go in, you have a trainer, you have things. If you're hurt or you have some injury, you'll go in and get treatment. So you're doing that in between classes or right before practice. And you're going to class from that, 10, you usually want to, obviously you want to shower after weights, but it's usually shower. And then, from there you go to class and you'll be there till 2:30. And, then you try to go get some treatment, try to maybe work on your game before, and you'll be in practice for, depending on how your coach is, like, usually in preseason practice, like October when the season starts, but there's no games, the practices will be a bit longer, 2.5 hours.
Right.
And then you'll go home, you got to do homework, you got to study, you got to read, you got to do whatever you got to do. And then, like you said, then you have, your free time, especially on the weekends, especially if you know how to manage your time. Like I know you did, and I started to get later on in college. But if you manage your time pretty well, you can, like, have your fun and, go out and see friends and do all the type of stuff when you need to.
Right.
Or want to. But if you don't manage your time well, it can bury you, especially if you don't have good study habits to begin with as a college athlete. Like, they'll provide support for you and help you out as much as they can, but, like, if you let it bury you, it'll bury you.
Right. And I think this is a question you can answer beautifully for kids out there. A 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid looking to go to UCSB or a Division I school. Kids in high school right now, by you playing, do you say you were maybe undersized or not or oversized for a basketball player? What's your height?
I mean, I'm on my best day, I'm 6'2", I'd say.
Right. But you can shoot lights out. You do things that a lot of people can. From a kid for myself, I am 6 feet. There's a lot of 6-foot basketball players out there that are pretty good, but they're scared that Division I overlooks them and says you're not tall enough, you're not good enough. You playing for a Division I team and a top Division I team, you had players, UCSB has players of all shapes and sizes and heights, and they usually are a smaller team, but you had a couple bigger teams while you were playing. Yeah. Do you feel it's all about the height and that kids can... Do you think you can still play Division I? It's all about your skill or height. Like, what do you feel?
Especially now in this day, like, you look at Trae Young, right? Who's playing right now. Like, he's probably 6 feet. Honestly, he's probably your height. But I mean, not everyone can be Trae Young because he's so skilled and so talented and so crafty and all that type of stuff. I'm not saying everyone can be, but look at him. He almost, obviously have other good players, but he's almost carried his team to the Eastern Conference Finals, and he's 6 feet and not a big dude and not that athletic. He's not dunking on guys, not doing any of that. So I think in this day, it shows how much skill is more important than athleticism and other things. Of course, you're always going to get freak athletes, LeBron James, Ben Simmons, who he can't shoot at all, but he's going to be in the NBA, and he's going to be a really good player in the NBA because he's 6'10", he jumps out of the gym. He is skilled in certain areas, like he can dribble the ball, he can pass, but he defends really well, but he's just a freak,
Right.
You're going to have guys like that. Even in college, you have guys like that.
But what I want to know is, what are the fundamentals that a coach, maybe you are that 6-foot guy in high school and you're scoring 50 points a game, 40 points a game, but he comes and says, all right, the guy, I like a taller point guard or shooting guard. What is something that is going to stick out to your coach recruiting someone saying, this kid can make his free throws, he can shoot threes, he plays hard defense, he takes charges, he does all the little things that I want in a guy that is that height, and I know when he comes here, he's going to make a difference because people are going to overlook him.
Yeah.
Is that something he looks for?
For sure. Every coach looks for that. Like, a kid, well, number one, it's especially if you're undersized for the most part, unless you have, some gifts or athleticism, especially if you're, 6 feet and not the most athletic dude in the world. Like, all the winning is the most important thing. Like, if you're on a bad high, like, if your team doesn't win at all and you're that guy, they'd probably be like, I mean, you know what I mean? And then I think the other biggest things are the things you were saying, those intangibles, whether it be leadership, whether it be, passing the ball, setting up the offense, setting up the team, defending pretty well, at least to the best of your ability, showing that effort, And then also being able to knock down shots. Like if you can shoot the ball in today's day and age and defend, you'll always have a place on a team. You know, you can shoot the ball, dudes will take you. Granted, you have to the more deficient you are in other areas, the better you have to shoot the ball.
Right.
But you know, I'd say that's the one thing. Like if you can shoot the ball, you'll always have a spot on a lot of teams.
Is there anything you would recommend to a younger kid out there that doesn't have that hype but has the ability to play with these guys? Focus on 3-point shooting from the sides or the corners or mid range. You know, the jumpers. Like, is there something that you recommend? Practice, and you can nail this.
Just
Coaches will take you.
I'd say if I could do it all over again, I'd like. You have to be able to shoot it, catch and shoots. You have to be able to shoot it off the dribble, and I'd say kind of the most important thing is being able to pass the ball like off, because the whole game now is ball screens, right?
Right.
Like you see it with Trae Young, you know, you see it with Chris Paul. So being able to like throw these, you know, bounce passes, short rolls. Of course, this is a little bit later on, but like throw lobs to big men or being able to hit your big, and you know, mid-range game with floaters and things like that is like beyond important now. And those are the types of things where if you can be effective in those, like you're gonna be great. Like and it'll show how good you are. Like if you're able to operate well in a pick and roll. Like guys make money just like Chris Paul. He's 6 feet as well. Like he's a good athlete, but he's not a crazy athlete where you're like, oh, this guy's a freak.
Right.
And he defends extremely well. Has all the intangibles. He makes every team he's on better, and he's so good in the pick and roll. It's just like, you know, he can score. He can shoot from three. He can shoot mid ranges, floaters, but he just passes the ball so well to Aiden and these other guys. Yeah, so I'd say that's kind of the most important thing. I'd say is the pick and roll and being able to shoot, of course, because that adds dimensions. But I'd say is being able to play in the pick and roll and obviously play defense. That's important.
That's some great advice. And coming from UCSB, you balled out. You did amazing. I loved watching you all 4 years. Transitioning,
Sure.
You have the amazing opportunity where there was an NBA draft. There's a bunch of places after college that you can play. And I think you took a route that I actually think it's the best route for right now, and I think everyone should get a chance to experience it. NBA is great, but playing overseas, it's a whole nother ideal. You had options to go all over the world to certain teams, and you picked Tel Aviv Maccabi as a team to sign with, and then you also then went and played for Herzliya. But
Yeah.
What was that choice? Why Israel? Why Tel Aviv Maccabi? Why Herzliya after that? Like, why not anywhere else?
So, like, long story short, I had some other, like, I played very well my sophomore year of college. I had some injury issues my last 2 years when I thought I could have, you know, catapulted myself to potentially being, you know, coming out of college and being getting a two-way or maybe getting drafted or getting signed, whatever. But with my injury issues and, you know, which affected my production at times as well. And then also there was no, at the time when I was signing, there was no, I was supposed to have some workout, like some NBA workouts. So there was no NBA workouts that year. There was no summer league, which I wanted to try and do. There was no, the G League was up in the air at that point. And then so the best option for me was to go overseas, which ended up being awesome. You know, I had some offers in some other countries to go different places, and, you know, but once, you know, you get an offer from a team like Maccabi Tel Aviv in EuroLeague, which is, you know, considered the second best league after the NBA. You know, it was hard to pass up, and it was also an experience in and of itself. Obviously, you know, you play professional basketball to make money and, you know, as a job, but it's also a love thing, and you get to experience things I would otherwise never experience. I don't think if I just stayed here and I was like, you know, I'm going to work in, I don't know, a certain job or coach or do whatever, go into finance or, you know, some things I had aspirations of doing, I would have probably never been to Tel Aviv in my life. I would have never had the experiences I did. You know, so I was very grateful, but to continue, like, I went to Maccabi Tel Aviv. They're, you know, a very established club in Europe, and, you know, the best team in Israel. And, you know, I went there as a rookie and I got there late. I didn't know exactly what was going on that much at the time. And I played sparingly, you know, here and there. Not as much as I wanted to, especially as a rookie. So between myself, sorry, and the club, I ended up going to a different team in the first division in Israel, Bnei Herzliya, and then ended up putting up really good numbers there. Enjoyed my time there too. I didn't travel as much. Like when you're with Maccabi or a EuroLeague team, you travel to, I went to Madrid, I went to Istanbul, I went, other places in Spain, and then I wasn't there the whole year, but they go to Greece, Russia, Lithuania, they go all over the place. So it's like a really, really awesome experience. But it was obviously this year was a bit different with COVID. I went to, like I said, I went to Istanbul and Madrid, two great cities I'd want to see and experience, especially because I knew I wasn't going to be playing like that. So it wasn't like not that I wanted to go and party or anything, but I was like, oh, I would love to go see the city and hang out at night and, whatever. But with COVID, I couldn't even leave the hotel. So it was kind of a weird experience, just like, oh, it's my first time in Turkey, or it's my first time in Spain. And I'm just sitting there in a hotel, just like sitting in this hotel room by myself, just like, oh, this is cool, I guess. But no, I mean, it was really a great experience, but it was like, I wish I could have really seen the cities.
All right. And speaking of experience and basketball, it's a different game. I think European basketball is completely different from the West Coast of the NBA and the way the college plays. You can a little bit talk about that on how ball handling's different in their plays and what they do, how the coaches react. I know you have a great story about the Tel Aviv coach, about going off on you guys, and he has his accent, and you're like, I don't really know what he's saying, but this is awesome. Like,
yeah, no, I just remember like the first game I was really like playing in, I messed up whatever he like had taken me out. I was having actually a solid game, but he just yelled at me like so crazy, like so not so crazy or bad, like it wasn't that out of normal, but it's like my first time really experiencing accents with a coach, so he's like screaming at me, and when you're upset, your accent starts to come out a little bit more. So he's screaming at me, and I'm like understanding like most of the words, but I'm like sitting there, I'm like, number one, I'm like, damn, I just messed up, and like I'm pissed at myself, but I'm also like trying to understand, like it's because I got better over time, but he was just chewing me out so bad, and that was kind of like my first moment there. But yeah, it's way different. Like, here, so for example, in Europe, even, some higher level teams, you have to like, you can get cut basically at any moment. Like when I went to Herzliya, I want to say 8 different American teammates.
That's insane.
Like 4 or 5 were, when I got there, because we ended up doing okay and doing well and stuff. When I got there, they were really bad, and so they brought myself in. Guy Abdul Ghadi went to Washington. Another guy Terrell Parks, another guy Elijah Thomas, and then they brought in the guy Jared Cunningham. They brought us all in the span of probably a month or less, and they released all their guys. So it was that, and then we had some injury problems. Like Jared got hurt, he had to go home after he was only there for a month. So it's just way more like in the NBA you have a set roster, and it'll almost always, unless you trade or whatever, it'll almost always stay that way. In Europe, you're messing up, you're not doing what you're supposed to do, you're not playing well, your team's not winning, they can cut you like that. Like they might not even. Some teams might not even pay you. Like it's way more cutthroat.
And speaking of pay, I mean, I've asked you this 5,000 times. John tonight asked you this. What is it like living in the Mediterranean of Israel? And what did they give you? What did they put you in? To share a little, I know they put you in a super nice apartment. You didn't have to. I mean, what did they give you? Let's have you answer.
So I mean, I don't. I kind of got like, especially to the European life, I kind of got spoiled a little bit because I went into, 2 good situations in the first division in places where, they take care of you. So they gave me, my house, or they gave me an apartment that was nice, and it was great. They gave me a car. I mean, that's what they give all the players. So they, housing, car, pay for everything. So then obviously you get your money, and basically for the 9 months, 10 months you're there, or however long you're there, all you have to pay for is food and whatever you want.
And then taxes are great.
Yeah, because obviously since you're making your money there, you come back with, you know, a lot more money. So if you're, you know, let's just say making, I don't know, a million overseas or something, right? Or 200,000 overseas would be, you know, like here would be making, you know, double or something, just because you're coming back with a lot more of your money, which is great, you know. But yeah, it's just like it's such an interesting thing. Like, but you said living in this Mediterranean, it was like it's a bit of a culture shock initially. I was surprised, honestly, how developed Israel was. Like, you know, obviously my mom is Jewish, and so like I know Israel isn't like the desert or something, you know. But I was surprised how, like, when you go in the city, if you go to Tel Aviv, like, it looks like, I don't know, if you didn't know where you were, you could be like, oh, this is Miami, or this is like, you know, it looks
Santa
like
Monica, or
yeah, it looks like a big city, like
Venice.
Yeah, like it's beautiful. Like the beaches are awesome. Like
you go to the north and it looks like Ventura, the Malibu area, hills, mountains, and
yeah, it was so crazy. And you've been there, so you know how it is. It's so crazy to see, just how developed it is, and I didn't know that at the time.
How are the people? Because you don't speak a lick of Hebrew. I know you understand little tiny things, but
well, now, yeah, a little bit, yeah,
a little bit. I know I had called up a couple friends up in Israel and helped you out up there, but
which I appreciated very much, because I was going there friendless, you know, of course.
Shout out to Neve and Omer for helping Max out. But
yeah, great guys.
What was it like? I mean, when I was there, you would speak English to any of the people, and they look at you like, "What are you saying?" I mean,
really?
Yes, English is around the world, but they speak Hebrew there.
Yeah, no, so it was hit or miss. Honestly, I've heard there more than a lot of other countries, more people speak English there. Because for the most part, I go around and most people would speak English, but a lot of the time, or not a lot, but sometimes I go into places and, you know, some people would speak no English, whether it's the person at the register, at the grocery store, or, you know, like I don't know, if I delivered food, he'd call me and, you know, I'd try to speak to him in English and he wouldn't speak any English. So it's definitely hard to navigate, because they just start, you know, speaking. Of course, you're in their country, you know, so they start speaking Hebrew. So you're like, oh, I should, you know, they of course think that you speak Hebrew, especially me, because, like, you know, I look like I would probably speak Hebrew, especially I'm there. It was funny, like, actually, when I'd be with some of my other teammates and we walk in anywhere, and my teammates would, like, you know, talk to the person at the register or whatever, they would immediately, or at the beach, they want to talk to them or something, they would immediately just start talking to me in Hebrew, like, you know, assuming that I spoke. And I was just,
and you're like, I don't know what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm like,
I have no clue.
Yeah, so I'd be like, no.
I get it's the beard, but I have no clue.
Exactly. I'd be like, no, I'm sorry, like English only. But, you know, I got around a little bit. Like, I was able to say, like, hey, how are you? You know, things like that, like greetings. And
did any of you and your teammates have funny experiences, like taxis? I know when I was there, taxis, they don't speak English. I need to get back here. It's not like Uber or Lyft. You can call up an Uber or Lyft and kind of tell them where you're going already. It's old-fashioned taxis over there for the most part. I couldn't get back to my house when I was there visiting. Did you have any funny situations with the teammates where you're like, this is what living overseas feels like and we're lost right now?
Man, I mean, because we had cars, we didn't, because it was a little bit easier and we could drive places and do those types of things. But I just remember, like, oh, man, like when we try to find certain places that we were looking for, like if we had parked and, you know, we're trying to find a certain place and talking to someone or even trying to get something, sometimes it would be so difficult. You know, like we'll be on the beach trying to, like, get one of the beach chairs, and one of the guys might not speak any English, so he grabs another guy, and the other guy doesn't really speak English. So it's like, you know, we're trying to figure out, like, what's going on. We're like, hey, can we just take these chairs? We have to pay about. So, you know, it's like it's always kind of an experience, you know, everywhere you go.
And I know you leaving, you had a major experience, which everyone might know about, from an American basketball player, and then you're supposed to leave, and next thing you see rockets flying above. Israel, if people don't know, is one of the safest places in the world. Yeah. What their security, military is, they have an Iron Dome for a reason. I know there's a lot of political things go back and forth, but I mean, that's probably so scary for you, especially for all you players. You guys are not from there. Guys are from elsewhere, and you're trying to leave, and next you know, I don't know, you're living in a war.
Yeah, so literally the league the regular season had 2 weeks left, I want to say. Yeah, 2 weeks, and it was crazy. Right before the missiles actually started, me and a friend of mine were like, he'd never been to Israel either, and we were both like, I'm surprised how safe it is. Nothing's happened here. Like it's been the whole 9, 10 months, and it's been perfectly fine. Just kind of the whole nine, and then all of a sudden, I was actually coming out of the shower, and about to put my clothes on and stuff, and all of a sudden you hear the sirens going off, and so
You're like, what do I do? What do I do?
Yeah,
Where do I go?
Yeah, so
is this real? Is this fake? Is this a test?
And I was the only one in the locker room at the time because my teammates were watching. One of our former teammates watching him play. He ended up going down to the second division, but we're watching him play in the other room. So I'm in there alone, like getting dressed, because I'm naked. I just got out of the shower, so I'm getting dressed as fast as I can. I walk out to like the kind of common area where the gym is. Everyone's gone, so I'm just sitting there hearing the sirens and hearing bombs hit each other.
You're like, this is not like back home when they do the earthquake drill and it never happens when we're in school. Like you're like, this is legit. This is real. People told me about this. Agents told me, but
crazy. And
welcome to life.
Yeah, and then so literally I'm like walking slowly in near the weight room and near some other things, and I'm like, where is everybody? I'm like, where do I go? And then someone ended up coming and grabbing me and taking me into the shelter. But it was like I was almost in shock for a little bit because I was like, what do I do? Where do I go? Like this isn't. And for them, it's so crazy to think about, but for them, it's like a reality. It's like this happens. I don't know,
a lot.
Every couple of years.
I've heard stories they were on the beach, and after sirens end, they go back to going in the water.
Yeah, it's and for me, I feel like it's like you see missiles hitting each other in the air, and you're like, as an American, you're like not used to that experience, and going into a bomb shelter and hearing a siren in the middle of the night. Those aren't experiences that we have here. And there, a lot of people are just like, it's fine. Like it'll be, it's such a surreal thing that's the thing that they experience every day. Not every day, but that's something that is their reality. Versus for us, it's like, we're freaking out.
Right.
So it's just, it was so wild to be a part of. And then obviously you see. So I would go and I'd talk to some friends, or we'd still have practice occasionally during the missiles and stuff. And so I'd go to practice and I'd be like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. And I'd get home and I'd see my phone. Everyone's, my family and friends like calling me when people were up. Because obviously it's a 10-hour time difference. And I'm seeing on Twitter like all this stuff about, what's going on. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is so scary,
Right. And it's not just Israel. There's all over I'm not naming countries, but countries all over with the professional leagues. America's great. It's safe to the most part. Israel is ridiculously safe. I get it. These things happen, but what they did there made you safe, made everyone around you safer. There's schools. Not schools. There's countries all over that have these problems. The same thing. Wars going on left and right. And being an American citizen and being over there, they teach you and they let you know about these things, about going overseas and situations not to do and what to do. It's scary for probably all the European basketball players.
Yeah, but it's like, I don't know. That's not. I thought going over there, I'd hear, maybe one siren, I'd hear something in the distance or something, but I wasn't prepared for that. They fired over 2,000 rockets at least. It was just insane being there.
So you go from Israel.
Yeah.
You're back home now. It's summertime. You just experienced your first year of professional basketball. What are your plans now? What is the future? Is it the G League? Is it the NBA? Is it playing national for Austria or Israel or America that you can play for? What is it?
So, for me now, my number one goal is to, my agents talk to some teams already and trying to figure out what's the best situation, but it's trying to do NBA Summer League. Because, of course, every kid's dream is to, especially from the U.S., is to play in the NBA. But I am still on contract with Maccabi. So we're figuring that out now, like, exactly what I want to do, what they want to do with me, if our visions align and things like that. I have a few offers in some other countries, a few offers in Israel and stuff like that to go back out there. And then, if Summer League doesn't happen, my dad was a professional skier, as you mentioned earlier, and so he represented Austria, and so they actually called me to do training camp and be a part. They actually called me up earlier in this past year to come in the European qualifiers to come play with them, but I couldn't, unfortunately.
What is like that process? Do you have to go to Austria and play there, or do they play elsewhere? Like,
so I don't know what it would have been originally, but they had like basically bubbles, like for all the teams, like all the European teams, they had bubbles. So like I know Austria's games were in Slovenia. Obviously didn't end up going, but so they offered me to go there, and so I'm thinking about doing that. But yeah, they had a bubble in Slovenia, and I guess they all played. I don't know. I wasn't there, so I don't know too much, but. Yeah, so I think it would mean a lot to my dad at the end of the day if I went and represented his country and then by association my country as well. So I mean I'm just kind of trying to feel everything out and see what opportunities present themselves. But,
if things go as planned for the future, would you play for Team Austria in the Olympics if that was an opportunity?
I mean if we ever made it, it's like obviously there's a whole bunch of qualifiers and things you have to do.
Do they usually not qualify?
Not for the Olympics, not for basketball. They're really good at winter sports.
Team Heidegger right here. You're gonna change the Austrian basketball league. So
they have some good players. It's just like they haven't. It's tough. Like it's only a certain amount of teams qualify, especially from Europe. Only a certain amount qualify. So it's usually Spain, Germany, Italy, Greece. Right. Those countries.
I'm calling it right now. On this podcast, and you're seeing it on Mike for Success, Team Austria, Max Heidegger, give it 8 years. He's going to be in the what is it, the LA Olympics 2028. I'm calling it right now. He's going to make that. He's going to make that happen.
We would love that. Austria would love that. I would love that. But yeah, I think we all appreciate that's a big time goal. I'd love that. Like that would be huge. Huge.
That's awesome. And speaking of goals, what is your goal for the remainder of the future? You've gone through your first half of your full career.
Yeah.
You're in your 20s now. Your goal is to get to the NBA. What is it? Like, where do you see after now experiencing overseas, experiencing college ball, experiencing some of your friends, Anthony Melton, people in the NBA? Where do you see yourself from the opportunities you have now?
I mean, of course, I think I can, play at the NBA level, and that's my goal at the end of the day. But at the same time, Europe is like, it's awesome. Like I said, it's a great experience. I really love it out there. So if that's, I want to play for as long as I can and as long as it makes sense for me, like, both with my body and all that type of stuff. But I mean, it can be a great Europe. What people don't understand is unless you're from Europe or whatever, they don't understand that it's a great career. You can get paid a lot of money. You can have a great lifestyle. You can be way more cultured. Like in the 10 months I was in Israel, I grew up probably more than I did, my whole time in college, like my 4 years when I was supposed to really grow up. I feel like I grew up more in the year being away, or I call it a year, but it's more like 9-10 months away than I did in my full 4 years of college, basically. So I don't know, man. I'm just, ready for whatever opportunity presents itself, and just, enjoying my time home right now, because I just got back about 3 weeks ago or so. So man, it's been great, and I love seeing you and hanging out here. It's an awesome spot, but yeah, just happy to be home and trying to figure everything out now.
It's amazing. And the question I ask all my guests when they come on, the whole goal of this is to teach the youth. I get it. We are the youth. We are the 22, 23-year-olds, but the 15s and 12s and all the kids listening and wanting to be like you or get to the position that you are in the future that they see you. What is some advice you would give to, you had to flash back to your 10-year-old self, anything you would do different, or would you keep on track for what you said tonight on your process? Anything for a kid to be like, can you give me some insight that can help me get to where you are?
Yeah, I mean, of course, for myself, I'd change a lot of things. But I think the biggest thing I'd change if I could go back was to, especially if you're really serious about sport or whatever you're doing, I think would be to put all of yourself into it. No matter what it is, whether it be basketball, soccer, or even, acting or producing or, being a doctor or whatever, put your all into it, and then good things usually come out. You only usually have regrets if you, I don't know if I can curse on here, but if you half-ass something, I think that's the only way that you really you really have regrets. Because if you put your all into it and it doesn't work out, then you're like, okay, you know, and good things will come of it. Whether it's you might not reach your goal, but great things will come of it. Like, you know, if your goal is to be to a kid, if his goal is to be an NBA player, maybe that's his goal. He might not reach it, but if he puts his all into it, he could get a free college education. He could play overseas. He can, you know, make money there. He can have these experiences and meet these people he otherwise might not have met. So I think the biggest thing is just if you really care and you really love it and you're really serious about it, I think put your all into it, and then, you know, good things will come of it.
That's some great advice. And if you are listening / seeing this, take that all in, because it's only going to make you grow. And you got someone here growing and giving some insight to the youth.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
No problem. And I know John really wanted me to ask you this. What is your favorite Pokemon card?
Oh, man. I mean, his friend John, who's now, I'd like to call him my friend as well. Great guy. But we were having a Pokemon conversation earlier, and I think my favorite Pokemon would probably be Squirtle. Not Blastoise, but it's got to be Squirtle. He's just so adorable, and like, you know, water. I always wanted to, like, you know, you're in the shower like doing weird stuff as a kid, so I always wanted to like be able to water bend. So I'd say Squirtle. Squirtle's the man.
That's great. Mine is Blastoise, so the evolved version of that. But we got Chef Cini down below making food for us, and I know he also wanted me to ask you this. What's your favorite food to make?
Mine to make?
Yeah.
I don't have a vast repertoire.
Because if you can't cook, we're already getting food right after this, after we get off of this from Chef Cini. So
yeah, I'd say probably salmon and rice.
Salmon and rice, and that's probably what you made in Israel?
Yeah, I made it a good amount. And then, you know, I actually didn't cook really at all before I got there. And then once I got there, I started experimenting.
Chef Heidegger coming soon in your local cities near you.
Yep, 2022, let's call it.
But thanks, Max. Thanks for coming on. This was great. And for all you guys that have not followed Mike for Success, we are on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, anything you can listen to through the Google Play app and all those weird other podcast servers. We are on that. Visuals, go on Instagram at Mike for Success, Twitter, LinkedIn, anywhere you can tap a social. We are on that, or I am on that. So great job, Max. Do you want to give your social out to the world?
I don't even know them, honestly, offhand.
I will tag Max and everything. He's a big Instagram person. Not really, but
yeah, no, I'm very very low key.
He's like a post once every 2 years type of guy.
Yeah, it's honestly like I just, you know, it was never a thing for me. I mean, it's becoming like it's crazy now that it's like a business thing. Like, you know, like obviously it's social media is so huge now that you almost have to do it. But yeah, I just never got into it, so I'm way behind the 8 ball.
So speaking of that, I'm gonna tag Max. I'm pretty sure it's Max Heidegger, how you spell his name, with like a 2-1 something. It's like a weird little number on the end.
I think it. I don't know if there's an underscore, but I think it might be Max Hyde 21. But I don't want to.
I think it's that. But I'm gonna tag it in Spotify caption and Apple Music caption and everywhere else. So if you guys want to DM Max and ask him some questions, this guy's very friendly. He will 100% answer your questions and
for sure
maybe be your friend too.
Yeah. Friendly guy.
But great talking to everyone. Yeah. Great whoever's listening, and thank you, Max, for coming on. And
thanks, Mike. Appreciate it, man.
We're tuning out. Peace.